Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the AIESEC in Sri Lanka Vodcast with IFS, the nation's first podcast on youth leadership development. Today we'll be talking about how technology has impacted leadership in companies and organizations across the world. So to speak a little bit about AIESEC, AIESEC is an international youth-run organization currently present in over 100 countries across the world and has been working towards developing value-driven young leaders since 1948. AIESEC in Sri Lanka is a national chapter of AIESEC and is currently present in over 20 universities in Sri Lanka and boasts a membership of over 2,000 working towards developing young leaders island-wide. And then talking a bit about IFS as well. IFS is one of the most prominent IT companies in Sri Lanka, which develops and delivers cloud-based enterprise software solutions to companies all across the globe. IFS currently has over 5,000 employees all across the world and over 2,500 employees in Sri Lanka. So for today's episode of the AIESEC in Sri Lanka podcast, we have two distinguished guests from IFS joining with us. Rifki Razick, who is the Vice President for Engineering at IFS.
Good to be here, Kanil.
And Asitha Rajapaksha, Lead Product Specialist at IFS, as well as an alumni of AIESEC in Sri Lanka.
Good to be here.
And myself, my name is Kanil. I am the current President of AIESEC in Sri Lanka, and I will be your host for this episode of the AIESEC in Sri Lanka podcast. So right as we start off, I think it's very important for all of our viewers to understand exactly what is leadership through technology. So to answer that question, Rifki, what do you think leadership through technology is?
Yes, I think leadership through technology is about leveraging the power of technology to drive change in an organization for the good, right? So when you talk about software and information technology, I think that plays a primary role in this aspect. You might hear the word digital transformation these days quite a lot, right? So that's exactly what technology needs to do, transform businesses to the better using technology.
And Asitha, what are your thoughts on this matter?
Yeah, I think leadership through technology, it empowers people and organizations to take upon new challenges and new opportunities and simply differentiate themselves from their competition to become a better leader in their space, in their own space, I would say.
Yes, I think I would agree with the both of you as well. But in addition to that, I think leadership through technology is also about providing a more empowering and better experience for either your employees or the people working with your organization, using technology to actually give them a more fulfilling experience. And so along with that, I think we cannot talk about leadership in technology without talking about working in a virtual or hybrid working environment. So in that case, Asitha, how do you think technology has impacted working in a virtual or a hybrid work environment?
Yeah, actually for me, it was a bit of a personal experience because as I started my first job, within a few months, I had to transition myself into fully remote working environment. But I think the biggest pro in working remotely is the increased diversity among teams. Like for example, if you are working physically, you wouldn't have the ability to incorporate people from different countries and different regions into one team. But working remote has enables this opportunity to in one team you can have different people from different areas to increase the diversity of the team.
And Rifki, what are your thoughts on this as well?
Absolutely. I think we saw during the pandemic the fact that, we used a lot of collaboration tools and things like that for remote work. And we saw sort of productivity go up quite a bit. But sometimes that comes at a cost as well, right? The lack of team bonding, team interaction, that human aspect to work was lost. But I think right now we move towards a hybrid sort of work setup where you meet once in a way at office and then you sort of conduct your work from home in the rest of the days of the week. That's working quite well, but it's important that I think we find that balance between remote versus in-person office work. I think going forward, companies will take that approach, and that's probably the best approach because we need to accommodate people working remotely as well, like for example, in locations away from office where the commute will be a hassle, right? So in that case, I think the hybrid model will be the most successful going forward.
Yes. I think adding on to the point that Asitha mentioned as well about increasing diversity within a team, I think that's something we've experienced inside AIESEC as well. So for example, a few years ago, before the COVID-19 pandemic, AIESEC was only present in Colombo, Galle, Kandy, basically the major metropolitan areas in Sri Lanka. But after the pandemic, after we gotten used to working in virtual and hybrid environments, we've seen the organization expand into a lot of new areas, including AIESEC in Jaffna, AIESEC in Sabaragamuwa, AIESEC in Vaunia, and so on and so forth. I think about that, bringing a lot of diversity into organizations, that's a very big positive impact that we've seen coming from virtual environments as well. But at the same time, even though working in this new environment has brought a lot of positives to companies and organizations, one thing that we have struggled with is how do we create a sense of team belonging and team bond within the people that we work with. So I think Rifki, as a leader in a major company in Sri Lanka, what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I think sort of the pandemic brought like at the beginning a total virtual sort of setup, right? I think the key point here is that even in a fully virtual setup, I think you need to bring that human element into your team environment and set up that culture. So, for example, just think about a physical office meeting. When you go into the meeting room, you sort of have these chit chats and sort of discuss informal things with your colleagues, right? And that's where you really create that bonding in teams. So we need to bring that into the virtual environment as well, and then not just having a formal virtual meeting, but making sure that you have those informal conversations even within those virtual meetings. This is in addition to the focused sort of team bonding events that you have virtually, like playing games and sort of doing quizzes and things like that. I think even in day-to-day sort of formal meetings, it's important to bring that human element into those.
Yes. And Asitha, what are your thoughts on creating a team bond in the virtual environment?
Yeah, as we talked about the pros of the remote environment, this is one of the major cons, I would say. So the problem is when you are working remotely, you don't have that sense of belonging that it naturally create when you are working physically, right? The little informal chats. So what I think the most important part is create that consistent effort when you are fully working in a remote environment to ensure that you have those moments within your teams. And also one of the main things is like you create an environment where everyone feels comfortable being part of that team, right? So your team can have a lot of extroverts, so your team can be having a lot of introverts as well. So making sure that your environment actually supports everyone to be part of that team.
And I think, as Rifki mentioned as well, those small informal conversations that you have with your colleagues actually play a very big part in creating that team bond. That's something that we missed in both, not just in companies like IFS, but in universities and student-based organizations as well. But universities, they have been adapting this change as well, and some very interesting changes that we have seen is, even in some lectures, the lecturers have decided to do a small icebreaker to get the students more acquainted with the environment, to get them more acquainted with each other before they start off the actual academic work, to get them interacted more through those informal spaces. And even another very good, I suppose a good case practice that we have seen is online games. You might have remembered 1 year ago, or maybe even 2 years ago, there's a very popular game called Among Us, and we saw not just students or not just young people, but we saw companies like IFS, companies like so many other companies embracing these kinds of games and helping their employees to get used to these things as well. And collaborating in those games has actually helped create this sense of team bond, and they have created a sense of belonging within these teams as well. Yes, so moving on from talking about working in a virtual or in hybrid environment, talking more specifically about technology and how it has impacted the way that we do our work inside Sri Lanka. Something that's very important for us to talk about is the usage of data and analytics. So Asitha, in your experience, both as an AIESEC and as an employee at IFS, how has data and the usage of data and analytics helped you in your work?
I think the main part is decision making. Because if you don't look at the data and you don't analyze those data, you don't know you don't know the place that you are putting your resources into, right? You are just blindly making decisions. So what data analytics does is give you an idea. Okay, this is where my bottleneck in my process. This is where I can optimize my workflow. So it gives an idea to the organization or the decision makers to give them an idea to the place that they could focus on their efforts, I would say. Yeah.
And then Rifki, same thing. How do you think data analytics has affected work at IFS?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a saying called data is the new oil, right? So I think for us, data-driven decision making is key to the product features we build for our customers and understanding how our customers are using the product, right? Analytics, that sort of thing. We also help our customers to sort of understand their own data environment, data estate, by providing various tools to analyze their data and help them with decision making. And then add on to that, we have these new technologies like AI and ML, right, where we can make predictions into the future, using data that we have today. For example, we use that in a business context to help customers predict future sales or business opportunities, that sort of thing within the product. So that's where data and analytics plays a key role at IFS.
I think that's actually very amazing to hear about the work that IFS has been doing in terms of data analytics. So AIESEC being a student organization, I don't think we're at the same level in terms of usage of data inside AIESEC as a major multinational corporation like IFS. But at the same time, we have been taking a few steps towards becoming more data-driven in our decision making as well. For example, we have a lot of data about our members, about our exchange participants, our partners flowing through the organization. And we have very recently started to create a new team inside AIESEC called the development team of AIESEC in Sri Lanka to capture this information so that in the future we can utilize it to make more business-driven or data-driven decisions. To make more data-driven decisions. And so that's one of the few innovations that AIESEC in Sri Lanka has been driving in terms of technology, in terms of data. But I think from Rifki especially, as the Vice President for Engineering, we would be very interested in getting to know about what kind of innovations IFS specifically has been driving towards technology.
Absolutely. I think as a technology company, IFS cannot do without innovation, right? We continue to sort of look at the technology landscape and make sure that we adopt the right technologies. I think for us, the key point is that we need to adopt technologies not for the sake of adopting, but making sure that our customers can actually use that technology in a business context. So in that, we work a lot with, various, as I mentioned previously, we do a lot of AI, ML things, but that is in a business context. We also have an innovation arm within IFS called IFS Labs, that focuses purely on cutting-edge technology and how that can be used in our business applications context in cloud software. Now, some of the areas that we've been looking at has been, like I said, AI, ML some time back, and then we look at things like the new stuff like blockchain and things like that that's coming up. So that IFS Labs, I think one of the key sort of points for IFS Labs is go and try out anything and experiment and sort of try and see what we can use within our application.
And yes, so that's about the innovations that IFS has been driving in terms of technology. But the next thing that we need to actually think about is, why is leadership through technology actually important? Why should companies like IFS, why should organizations like AIESEC actually focus towards developing leaders through technology? So Asitha, I would like to hear about your opinion on this.
Yeah, actually, I personally think it's not a question about why, it's a question about when. Because if you don't adapt to the new technologies, you as a person or as a company will be caught out with the new technology. One of the personal experience that I have in this leadership through technology is before the pandemic, our entire family was a long time customer for a certain bank. But with the pandemic, everyone had to switch to the digital banking concept, right? The issue was this bank didn't have a proper app. So we as consumers didn't have any other option rather than switching banks to a bank that had a actually good functioning app, right? So similar to that case, if you as an individual or a company don't adapt to the change and adapt to the new technology quickly, you will be caught out by the technology itself.
Yes, and then Rifki, what are your thoughts? Why do you think leadership through technology is actually required in today's modern world?
Yes, I think Asitha gave a really good example on online banking that has become basically a mandatory requirement for a bank these days, right? But if you look at some time back, technology is really important to provide, stay ahead of the competition. A classic example is Kodak, right? Years back, they were the sort of leaders in photography, but they couldn't really embrace digital technology in a right way, which meant that, other companies like Samsung and Sony were able to sort of come in front of them and lead the digital photography market. So I think it's really important that, we as leaders stay curious about what technologies are coming and how that can be used and leveraged to, stay ahead of the competition and sort of drive your business forward.
Yes, I think that's completely correct. Leveraging technology to actually stay ahead of the curve. I think something along the lines of what Asitha mentioned as well, especially when it comes to working with Generation Z and even Generation Alpha, something that's very important to these young people is the technologies that they interact with. So when it comes to working with can be a bank or any kind of industry, it's not just about the basic services that you provide. It's very important that you have a strong presence in the digital landscape as well. It can mean having a well-functioning, proper-looking and a efficient website. and it also can mean having a good app that is available on the app stores for them to download and use very easily. It's simply not enough anymore just to provide a good service. You need to be very strongly present in the digital environment as well in order to be noticed, especially among the younger generations. And then talking a bit more specifically about the younger generation as well, I think Asitha and Rifki would agree with me on this as well. Something that we've seen is that the newer generations that are entering the workforce, most likely the Generation Z, their primary concern about working in a job is not the work environment, it's not the salary, but they also care about the practices of the company that they're working for. That is a phrase, environment and social governance is a phrase that we've heard a lot over the past few years. They care about the impact that the companies they're working on, they care about the impact that the companies they work with are creating on the communities around them. They care about the social impact that the company has on the environment, and so on and so forth. So, Asitha, can I know your thoughts on this as well?
Yeah, I think when it comes to generation Gen Z, mostly like they want to be align themselves with brands, companies who are actually responsible in their into the communities that they are part of, right? And it makes sense because like as companies, you are part of a certain community, and you're using that community's resources such as HR resources and few other resources, right? So as a corporate citizen, they have a responsibility to contribute back to that community. It could be with the CSR projects, and it could may well be with using local vendors who are practicing who are using ethical practices, right? So those kind of things are, I think, becoming not just like the corporate things; those are becoming mandatory for every company.
Yes, and Rifki, what are your thoughts on the ESG movement?
Absolutely. I think now the ESG movement has become almost a given that all companies need to consider this, right? And it's at top executive level, this is like a top consideration. So I think when you talk about IFS, for example, we have set up a IFS foundation where we look at the society and what we can give back to society. For example, we help communities in rural Sri Lanka with setting up schools and providing them clean drinking water. So that's the charitable side of things. Then when you look at the environment, we need to be so responsible as a company towards the environment, right? So I know during the pandemic we sort of lowered air travel, and that sort of thing where there is a huge carbon footprint. But we sort of continue to look even post pandemic as like, is all travel really required? Do we need to take airline travel and air travel to that level? Pre-pandemic levels. So those are the things that companies are now considering, including IFS, in terms of ESG.
Yes, and another thing that I've seen that a lot of Gen Z workers are interested in is not just about the ESG activities that the company does, it's about what the activities that the people at the head of the company does as well. Let's say the CEO or the C-suite level of the organization, what kind of social issues are they interested in, what kind of charities are they contributing to, and their social presence on social media, what kind of activities do they actively contribute towards, what kind of causes do they want to help out towards. That's something that a lot of Gen Z workers are interested in looking as well before they join a company. As I mentioned earlier, it's not just about where they work, it's not just about the work that they do, it's not just about the salary, but it's actually more important to learn about what the impact the company is having on the community around them as well. So with that, I think we have almost reached the end of the podcast. But before we wrap up, I think our viewers would be very glad to hear a few final messages from the two of you. So Rifki, do you have any final messages for our viewers?
Yes, I think we spoke a lot about leadership and technology, right? I think for me, it's about, when you think about technology, there is new technology coming every day almost, right? It's moving very fast. But as leaders, I think we have to be curious and passionate about technology. But also we should look at technology as, you should not just adopt technology for the sake of adopting. Look at the value of what it brings to your organization where you lead, and then adopt the technologies that are right for you. So that's a key sort of decision I think leaders should think about. They should be curious and passionate, but make sure that they make the right choices when it comes to technology.
And then Asitha, do you have any final messages for our viewers?
Yeah, I think for young people, I think you should not be threatened by technology in a way, right? Because we hear a lot of chatter about now ChatGPT replacing writers and journalists, sort of like that, right? So the same thing happened with Canva and Figma when it came. It was going to replace every design. But what actually happened was everyone had access to make a decent design, but actually good designers used that technology to create much better designs for themselves, right? So it's similar towards new technology as well. It only matters how well you adapt to that technology and how well it used for your skills and becoming a better leader, I would say, in that area.
So thank you very much, Rifki, and thank you very much, Asitha, for your very insightful words. And so with that, I think we can wrap up this episode of the AIESEC in Sri Lanka Vodcast with IFS. Thank you very much for joining with us today. And we hope that you gained a lot of insights into how technology has impacted leadership in this modern day and age. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you again.